more. They were given more money and produced less. A 20-year-old criminal outsmarted them on a $40 drone technology piece of device. You're telling me that's more with less? That's disgusting. That's nothing with less. That's less with more. Their budget went up. You guys know, you're appropriators. You know that.
Okay.
Go check to see if he's.
Yeah. Okay. Subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. And we welcome everyone to today's hearing on Oversight of Homeland Security Investigations. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Without objection, Mr. Garcia will be able to participate in today's hearing for the purpose of questioning the witness and will receive 5 minutes for that purpose. I'll now recognize myself for an opening statement. I thank all the members for coming today, this important hearing, and I appreciate the Homeland Security Executive Associate Director Berger for joining us today. Today's hearing is titled Oversight of Homeland Security Investigations. Homeland Security Investigations, HSI, is a law enforcement agency within the Department of Homeland Security, and HSI has a broad mission and works to keep Americans safe. HSI plays a significant role in addressing child exploitation, both domestically and internationally. HSI handles more than 60% of CSAM cases in the U.S. that have an international nexus. In FY 2023, HSI initiated 6,601 child exploitation investigations and made 4,214 child exploitation-related arrests, and identified and assisted over 1,806 victims of child exploitation. The agency's specialized units, like the Cyber Crime Center and the National Child Victim Identification System, continue to be important in protecting children and dismantling global child exploitation networks. In this Congress, this committee has held two important hearings on these issues. The first was a year ago this month, titled Children Are Not for Sale, examining the threat of exploitation of children in the U.S. and abroad. The second was 6 months ago, entitled A Voice for the Voiceless, CSAM Identification. We heard important testimony during those hearings, and I look forward to continuing that discussion with Executive Associate Director Berger today. The very first hearing this subcommittee held this Congress was titled, The Fentanyl Crisis in America, Inaction is No Longer an Option. Unfortunately, that statement is still true today as it was last year when we heard the tragic stories from the loved ones that were poisoned by those who traffic in fentanyl. HSI has played a pivotal role in combating fentanyl trafficking into the country, seizing over 77,000 pounds of fentanyl in the last 3 fiscal years. In fiscal year 2023 alone, HSI seized over 41,000 pounds of fentanyl. However, in my opinion, HSI's efforts are slowed and hampered by its lack of Title 21 authority. Title 21 of the United States Code is needed to independently investigate and enforce drug laws. Currently, only DEA and FBI have Title 21 authority. Without it, HSI must rely on DEA approval to investigate narcotics trafficking. These unnecessary bureaucratic steps cause delays in investigations and hamper the success of both agencies. HSI's efforts domestically and internationally target the disruption of supply chains of synthetic opioids. HSI also combats numerous other threats to our citizens and our economy, such as preventing intellectual property theft, tackling cyber threats, and stopping financial fraud, illegal trade, and the sale of counterfeit goods. It is obvious that HSI has a full plate, which is why I was concerned to hear that HSI is overburdened by its commitment to support the U.S. Secret Service with protection duties. Make no mistake, I am committed to ensuring that those the Secret Service protect are fully protected so that we can avoid the situations we've witnessed over the past 2 months. But we need to do it in a way that is not interfering with other very important law enforcement functions. HSI faces operational challenges due to the diversion of personnel and funds to support Secret Service operations. From 2019 to 2024, HSI provided over 717,000 hours of personnel support to the Secret Service at a cost of over $23 million in unreimbursed salaries. And according to some whistleblowers, Some of the agents assigned to protect President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania were HSI agents. I'm curious to know the type of training that these protective agents that are on loan from HSI receive from Secret Service. As I indicated, I'm all for protecting our president, vice president, and major candidates for those office. But that is 717,000 hours that could have been used to combat human trafficking, interdict fentanyl trafficking, or stop the proliferation of CSAM. To that end, I have produced a document that I'm forwarding to the Speaker of the House on ways to mitigate Secret Service's needs, and look forward to his response to that. I look forward to discussing these issues with our witness this morning. Also, I would inform the body that this morning a story broke indicating that the attempted assassin, Mr. Ruth, who is now in custody, was referred to investigation by CBP to HSI, and HSI had declined that investigation. I've informed the EAD of that and look forward to hearing discussion about that as well. So with that, I yield back and recognize the ranking member, Ms. McBath, for her opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs, and thank you, Ms. Berger, for being with us today. We have a very important discussion ahead of us today, and I would like to shed light on the critical role and mission of Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI as we'll call from here on out, which is an integral division within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. HSI's nearly 9,000 person workforce operates in the United States and abroad, safeguarding our nation from a broad spectrum of threats that could compromise its security, safety, and well-being. The primary mission of HSI is to investigate and combat threats that undermine the safety and the stability of the United States. This mandate encompasses a wide array of responsibilities, reflecting the diverse nature of the threats we face in our interconnected world. HSI's work is crucial in maintaining national security and upholding the rule of law. HSI plays a vital role in preventing terrorist activities. Through robust investigations and intelligence gathering, HSI works to identify and disrupt terrorist plots before they even materialize. Their efforts include analyzing threats, investigating links between extremist groups, and coordinating with other agencies to thwart potential attacks. And the agency also ensures compliance with immigration laws. This involves investigating unlawful activities like human trafficking, document fraud, and the illegal employment of undocumented individuals. By enforcing these laws, HSI helps maintain the integrity of our immigration system. In an increasingly digital world, HSI is at the forefront of tackling cybercrime. They investigate complex cyber threats, including online fraud, identity theft, and the illegal distribution of contraband. Their work is crucial in protecting individuals and businesses from financial losses and data breaches. Special agents also address crimes that cross international borders, such as drug trafficking, organized crime, and money laundering. By disrupting these transnational criminal networks, HSI helps mitigate the impact of these illicit activities on communities nationwide and globally. Just as protecting children is a top priority for me, it is also a top priority for HSI. Their investigations target those involved in child exploitation, including online predators, producers, distributors, and consumers of child sexual abuse material, and human traffickers. By rescuing victims and prosecuting their offenders, HSI strives to ensure the safety and dignity of the most vulnerable among us. HSI's collaborative approach improves its effectiveness. The agency works closely with other federal, state, and local and international partners to address complex and evolving threats. This collaboration extends to leveraging advanced technology and data analysis and analytics to enhance investigative capabilities and operational efficiency. For example, investigators routinely partner with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to help identify and rescue sexually exploited children based largely on information that is extracted from images or videos found online. The technology used by purveyors of child sexual abuse material continues to evolve, leaving our children at even greater risk of harm. Atlanta, which I represent, for example, is one of the 14 cities with the highest rates of children used in sex trafficking and ranks just second in the country for the highest rate of human trafficking. Our children are our future and represent one of the most vulnerable populations. We must protect them and do everything in our power to ensure that they are safe and looked after. That is why I was so pleased that my bill, the End Child Exploitation Act, became law just recently. That law extends the period that technology companies must securely store information about child sexual abuse images that they report to NCMEC to give law enforcement, including HSI agents and their investigative partners, a greater chance of rescuing and bringing home our missing and exploited children. HSI is pivotal to our national security. The agency tackles diverse threats with broad and unique investigative and enforcement authority, which requires Congress to ensure proper guardrails to provide effective oversight. Given the sensitive nature of their work and the potential for abuse of power, HSI must operate with a high level of accountability and oversight. Only through a commitment to prevent overreach, protect civil liberties, and promote accountability, transparency, and effective oversight can HSI maintain the trust and confidence of the public and truly carry out its central mission. Today's conversation should focus on what more Congress can do to make sure that this agency has what it needs to fulfill the crucial role in keeping us all safe. I'm here today to find solutions and ensure that HSI has the tools that it needs to be successful and to keep us all protected. I look forward to what you have to say. Director, I really do. Thank you so much, and I look forward to all of us supporting HSI, and I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
I thank the chairman. I don't have an opening statement. I just want to thank the director for being here and for the work that her agency does, and I yield back.
I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Nadler, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, is a vital component of the Department of Homeland Security, responsible for conducting a wide range of investigations related to national security, border security, transnational crime, child exploitation, human trafficking and smuggling, and other threats to the homeland. The daily work of HSI agents involves conducting complex investigations, gathering intelligence, and collaborating with domestic and international partners to disrupt criminal networks and prevent potential threats to national security and public safety. One of the key features of HSI is its broad authority to use various tools and strategies to protect the country from terrorist attacks, cyber threats, natural disasters, and other risks. HSI agents have the authority to arrest individuals, seize assets, and execute search warrants in pursuit of their mission to safeguard the nation from a variety of threats. This authority necessarily enables robust intelligence gathering and analysis, supports border security, and provides for the critical protection of our online infrastructure. With this broad authority, however, comes the need for accountability and oversight to ensure that HSI and its partner agencies are acting in accordance with the law and with respect for our civil liberties. The nature of HSI's efforts, with its emphasis on urgency and sometimes secrecy, can sometimes lead to abuses of power or violations of individual rights. The potential for abuse has multiplied with the introduction of new technologies such as artificial intelligence, face recognition, and even cellular stingrays. Therefore, it is essential to have a robust oversight mechanisms in place, including congressional hearings like this one, independent audits, and judicial review to provide transparency and accountability and to safeguard against abuses of power. I hope that today's conversation includes a discussion of measures HSI has in place to ensure both transparency and accountability, which are crucial to maintaining public trust in the agency, protecting against the erosion of civil liberties in the name of national security, and ensuring that HSI's efforts are effective and proportionate to the threats it seeks to address. By promoting a culture of accountability and oversight, we can strike the right balance between protecting national security and our communities while safeguarding individual freedoms in a democratic society. I'm also interested to hear about HSI's recent efforts to gain Title 21 authority, which would give agents the power to enforce drug-related laws like those enforced by the Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA. While some have argued that this is good policy, I remain somewhat skeptical. Granting HSI Title 21 authority could create jurisdictional conflicts, operational challenges, and redundancies in efforts, potentially leading to confusion, inefficiencies, and complications in the execution of drug-related investigations. The existing framework of collaboration and coordination between HSI and the DEA, along with other law enforcement partners, has largely proven effective in disrupting drug trafficking networks, dismantling criminal organizations, and protecting communities from the harmful effects of illicit drugs. I am not convinced that expanding HSI's authority in this regard is necessary or wise, but I expect that Associate Executive Berger might have a different opinion, which I'm interested in hearing. Considering the broad mandate under which HSI operates, I'm also eager to hear what Congress can do to leverage the strengths of the agency and to ensure that it has the tools it needs to fulfill its mission of protecting the homeland and all Americans against the wide range of threats we face, both seen and unseen. Ms. Berger, I thank you for appearing here today, and I look forward to your testimony. Thank you, and I yield back.
Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will now introduce today's witness. Ms. Katrina Berger. Ms. Berger is the Executive Associate Director of Homeland Security Investigations, a role she has held since July 2023. She previously served as the Special Agent in charge of HSI's Atlanta, Georgia office and has served for more than 25 years in law enforcement. We welcome our witness and thank her for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is true and correct, to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony. Ms. Berger, you may begin.
Thank you. Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, and distinguished members of this committee, on behalf of HSI, I wish to express our condolences on the passing of Ranking Member Jackson Lee. As a special agent in charge in our Dallas, Texas office, I had the opportunity to meet with her on several occasions. She served our nation and the state of Texas as a dedicated member of this committee. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you today and to discuss the tireless efforts that the men and women of HSI perform to safeguard our nation's security, public health, and economy by identifying, disrupting, and dismantling transnational polycriminal organizations. I am truly humbled to represent their exemplary service to this nation. I am a career special agent and currently serve as the Executive Associate Director of HSI. In this role, I lead 8,700 employees, including over 7,000 special agents assigned to 235 domestic field offices and 93 international offices in 56 countries. I also oversee our 9 headquarters divisions, 11 specialized national centers, and the administration of our $2.4 billion annual budget. HSI was formed with the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, with a merger of the investigative components of the legacy U.S. Customs and Immigration and Naturalization Services, and is the largest criminal investigative component of DHS, empowered with broad legal authority to conduct federal criminal investigations into the illegal cross-border movement of people and merchandise to include goods, money, technology, and other contraband. HSI uses this broad authority to successfully investigate a wide array of transnational crimes to include national security threats, narcotics and contraband smuggling, transnational criminal gang activity, child exploitation, human smuggling, human trafficking, illegal export of weapons and controlled technology, money laundering, financial fraud, cyber and cyber financial crimes, intellectual property theft, trade fraud, identity and benefit fraud, and human rights violations, including war crimes. HSI special agents collect evidence in furtherance of criminal prosecutions, which result in the conviction of individuals and the dismantlement of organizations which would exploit our nation's borders and threaten the public safety. HSI's international presence is the largest within DHS and enables HSI investigations to reach far beyond our national borders. HSI's cadre of internationally assigned special agents, criminal analysts, and mission support personnel work alongside locally employed staff and foreign law enforcement, customs, and immigration partners to advance HSI's investigation and the DHS mission around the world. HSI also leads 8 national whole-of-government centers combating transnational crime, including the Angel Watch Center, which partners with the U.S. Marshals and CBP to use flight data to identify and alert foreign law enforcement of the international travel plans of registered sex offenders. The DHS Center for Countering Human Trafficking, which provides investigative support and training, as well as services to trafficking victims. The Cross-Border Financial Crime Center, which leverages HSI's expertise in money laundering and financial crimes investigations with industry experts and foreign partners to identify the illicit movement of money worldwide. The DHS Cybercrime Center, or C3, which supports, among other programmatic areas, investigations into the production and distribution of child sexual abuse material and technical forensic support to cyber-enabled crimes. The Export Enforcement Coordination Center, or E2C2, in partnership with DOJ and Commerce, which coordinates and supports investigations into the illegal exports of controlled technologies. The Human Rights Violators and War Crimes Center, which ensures individuals who commit atrocities worldwide are unable to flee and seek refuge within the United States. The National Bulk Cash Smuggling Center, which assists our domestic and international law enforcement partners in interdicting and investigating the illicit movement of bulk cash. And finally, the National Intellectual Property Rights Coordination Center, which is world-renowned for its expertise and effectiveness in combating intellectual property rights violations. In addition to investigations and results produced by our agents, HSI continues to serve as a lead component in DHS's overarching mission, protecting the homeland. This commitment to supporting fellow DHS components can be best illustrated through HSI's continued support to the Secret Service, CBP, and others. For example, between 2019 and 2024, HSI special agents have worked more than 700,000 hours in support of the Secret Service's essential protection mission. I would once again like to recognize the true strength of HSI, its workforce, who remain vigilant in their efforts to protect our nation from ever-evolving threats. Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, esteemed members of the committee, I look forward to answering your questions regarding the amazing work being done by HSI to safeguard our nation.
Thank you, Ms. Berger. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule with questions. I begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. I'd like to take a moment and commend HSI for Operation Boiling Point, DHS's response to organized retail crime. By partnering with groups such as the National Retail Federation and Coalition of Law Enforcement and Retail Clear, HSI has been able to bridge the gap between public and private information sharing and best practices to ultimately stop organized theft groups. HSI has spoken publicly in the past about connections between organized retail crime and domestic and transnational criminal organizations, including groups engaged in human trafficking. Director Berger, have recent investigations found those types of connections?
Thank you for that question. Much of the work that we encounter, transnational criminal organizations, all organized crime is turned into poly-criminal organizations. They're involved not just in one type of violation, but multiple crimes that affect our communities. Organized crime, people may see organized crime and not think that it's very serious, but these groups are laundering money. They're involved in human trafficking, human smuggling, various ways to further their criminal business and their criminal enterprises.
Does HSI coordinate with state and local law enforcement in pursuit of this type of organized theft group, and if so, how?
Thank you for letting me elaborate on that. We definitely do. We collaborate on all levels with federal, local, state partners, with industry to investigate leads. We accept tips, leads to further investigate these types of crimes. We do outreach with industry as well so that they recognize some of the factors, the things that they need to report if they see suspicious activity.
And if you would, share with us what role, why you believe it is important, assuming that you do, that HSI and other federal agencies with multi-jurisdictional authority have a role in investigating and prosecuting organized retail theft.
Thank you for letting me elaborate a little bit further. Again, it's not just the organized retail theft, it's all of the associated crimes that these polycriminal organizations are involved with that are impacting our communities. They can be involved with, they are involved with illicit financial schemes, money laundering, human trafficking, human smuggling, Chinese money laundering operations. There's a whole plethora of violations and criminal activity that they're involved with that are putting our communities at risk.
And on that subject of human trafficking, I'd like to turn your attention to the work that HSI does in combating child exploitation and cyber crimes, specifically the use of the Cyber Crime Center, or C3. Would you please elaborate for us on C3, what it is, and how it operates?
C3, the department, it's Department Cybercrime Center. It's an HSI-led cybercrime center focusing on crimes and internet-facilitated crimes. One of our flagship programs is our work in the child exploitation area. We actively investigate and prosecute individuals and organizations that are involved with the production and the distribution of child exploitation material. We take this very seriously. This is a global problem, far-reaching. We work with our international partners to help protect not only child victims in this country, but child victims around the world.
And in that work, do you also partner with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children?
Yes, ma'am, we do. NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, is a fabulous partner. We have personnel embedded with them. Tim Tebow and the Tim Tebow Foundation is also a phenomenal partner and provides us with a lot of support, especially in being able to bring experts in the field from some of our foreign partner organizations and partner law enforcement in different countries to come and help identify and rescue victims through Operation Renewed Hope.
And actually, Operation Renewed Hope recently demonstrated an incredibly successful effort of partnership between HSI, NCMEC, the Tebow Foundation, and those partners you reference. Would you tell us a little bit more about that operation? And if you had additional resources and HSI agents working on that, is it something that you believe would be a successful effort in increasing the numbers of children who are rescued?
Yes, ma'am, it definitely would. Certainly we can always do more when we have more, either in the terms of staffing or funding. There's a lot that we can do with technology, a lot of technology out there that we can really further the identification and rescue of child victims.
Thank you, Ms. Berger. I now recognize the gentlewoman from Georgia, the ranking member, Ms. McBath.
Thank you so much. Ms. Berger, it's common practice for federal agencies to work with local law enforcement, as you've mentioned today, to deliver assistance and partner on various efforts to track criminals, close cases, and share information. What specific initiatives or partnerships has HSI established in Atlanta, which I represent, to combat child sex trafficking?
Thank you for that question, ma'am. Atlanta, being former special agent in charge there, and I maintain my residence there, is very near and dear to my heart. We partner with Secret Service and state and local agencies through the ICACs, the Internet Crimes Against Internet, ICAC, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling, forgive me, to identify risks for children out there. We do a lot of outreach with our Know to Protect campaign and our iGuardian campaign to educate children at all ages, minors, young children, teens, tweens, as to internet safety, parents, teachers, trusted partners, or trusted adults, so that if children are being preyed upon, if they're communicating with an adult online and they are requested to provide inappropriate pictures, that they know to come forward. They know that there's adults out there that they can talk with. It's a conversation that many people don't want to have, but we really need to be protecting our children in this fight against online predators.
Thank you. So what specific challenges and gaps has HSI encountered in its current approach to tackling child and sex trafficking, specifically in Atlanta?
Sorry, I'm still live on the mic. We work very closely with all the partners. We can always do more with more resources, but we work very collaboratively with our partners in this area, with NGOs, with the law enforcement partners, with the communities, with the schools. The more outreach we do, the more opportunities we're able to get in front of vulnerable communities and so they can hear our message, the better. I think ICE branding, certainly being able to have HSI standalone branding, which doesn't separate us, but lets us independently brand ourselves as HSI. We're able to reach communities such as immigrant communities that would otherwise not want to really talk to us or hear our message because of our affiliation and our association with ICE.
Thank you for that. So would you just describe for us the ways in which HSI is overcoming these challenges so that you can improve the effectiveness of combating crime, specifically in Georgia? I represent a district now that a large proportion of the people in my district are immigrants who've come from outside of the United States, and so I want to keep an eye and focus on making sure that I protect their interests as well, so thank you for that. What is the agency doing to evaluate also and refine strategies, address resource limitations, and to adapt to the emerging trafficking trends that keep growing day by day?
We're very involved with emerging threats. Atlanta, as you are well aware, is a hub. It is a major transit area for various transportation routes. Large cities, large metropolitan areas are often a prime area for human trafficking activities to take place. We continue to do significant outreach with industries such as hotels, hotel staff, service, hospitality industry, so that they recognize human trafficking efforts when they see it. I think many of us over the last couple of years have noticed an increased signage in airports, restaurants, under our Blue campaign, public awareness. If you see something, to come forward, recognizing the indicators of human trafficking and knowing what to do.
And I just want to say, I can remember when I was a flight attendant, I can remember, now I recognize what it was. I did not know at the time, but there would be many young women that would be put on the aircraft coming from either Texas or coming from New Mexico or Arizona, and they would get on board the aircraft and they would sit very quietly and they wouldn't answer any questions, they wouldn't say anything, and the minute they'd get off the aircraft, they would scatter into the bathrooms and scatter throughout the airport. And so now I'm recognizing that those were individuals that, some of them I'm sure were trafficked. So thank you very much for the work that you're doing, because I've actually kind of seen that in action. And I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Ohio, for 5 minutes. Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director, who's Kevin Rojek?
I'm sorry, sir, could you say?
Kevin Rojek, R-O-J-E-K?
I'm sorry, sir, I don't recognize the name.
Well, he's the special agent in charge at the FBI Pittsburgh office looking into the assassination attempt on President Trump. Took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. My understanding is HSI had a number of agents at Butler at that particular day. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We had 16 agents, special agents assigned to the Butler Farm
You had
rally.
16 of your people there.
16, 1-6.
Do you know how many Secret Service agents were there that day?
No, sir, I don't.
But you had 16 of your agents supplementing and helping with the security of President Trump on July 13th in Butler, Pennsylvania.
We provided support to Secret Service as collateral law enforcement support. We were not in a position where we were directly protecting the principal. We would never, as HSI agents, be assigned to that
Understand.
position.
But you were helping out that day.
Yes, sir.
And the guy who's doing the investigation, looking into what took place, where President Trump was hit by a bullet from the assassin, another American was killed, 2 other Americans were injured. The guy who was in charge of that investigation has not talked to you, even though 16 of your agents were there that day?
No, sir.
You don't even know Kevin Rojek, never heard of him?
I haven't. I can tell you that Monday, after the assassination attempt in West Palm Beach, I reached out to Acting Deputy Director Vince Tutoni, who was in West Palm or the vicinity at the time, had gone down. I did speak to him on Monday to further.
You reached out.
I reached out to him, sir.
Do you know who Jeffrey Veltri is?
No, sir.
Okay, he's the guy in Miami who works for the FBI who's overseeing what took place Sunday, the second assassination attempt on President Trump. You have not talked to him?
No, sir.
But you have actively reached out. And who's the individual you spoke to in Miami? He works for HSI?
No, Vince Tutoni. He's the Acting Deputy Director for Secret Service.
For Secret Service, okay.
I will say, if I may, certainly with an incident like this, they are certainly very busy. I did not take any offense that they did not reach out to me.
Even though it's been 2 months? I mean, since the guy in Butler, that's 2 months ago, and the guy running the investigation has not reached out to the individual in charge of the 16 agents who were there who were supposed to be helping supplement the protection of the president, or former president?
It's something, our support to Secret Service is something ongoing that we do all the time. It's baked into our mission. We've done this
Do you
historically.
have agents in Miami on Sunday working on President Trump's detail or helping supplement his Secret Service detail?
Yes, sir. We had 4.
You had 4?
We had 4. 2 were on shift and 2 were on shift, not in the immediate vicinity. 2 were not on shift at the time of the
So you had agents at both of the assassination attempts on the former president, and the individuals at the FBI conducting the investigations have not talked to you. In one case, that's been over 2 months ago.
Correct.
That's your testimony today. Is that accurate?
Correct.
I find that troubling. I find that troubling. Let's switch here for a second. What type of training do your agents receive before they, well, let me ask this. How long has HSI been supplementing the Secret Service and giving agents to help the Secret Service in their duties?
Sir, thank you for that question. Certainly back to our time when we were U.S. Customs Service agents with Secret Service under the Department of Treasury. I don't have the exact date, but this is historically something that we have supported Secret Service. I personally...
Fairly common, you're
Yes.
saying. Okay, and is it common to have like that many agents at an event with the former president? Like, was that unusual, or is 16 kind of normal, or do you sometimes have more, sometimes, what's kind of normal?
It varies based on the need and the situation.
Is it ongoing? Does President Trump always have some HSI people with him now when he's traveling, or even it looks like when he's at his residence in Florida?
We provide support to Secret Service, and then they assign our personnel as needed.
Okay. Madam Chair, I find it kind of astonishing that the people doing the investigation haven't talked to the individual who's in charge of so many of these agents who've been supplementing President Trump's security detail. Maybe that's why it's good that in the case of what happened on Sunday, Governor DeSantis is actually doing his own investigation. Maybe that'll be done a little bit better. With that, I yield back to the chairman of the committee.
Will you yield me just a moment?
Yeah, you got the last.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, my question is, the UN General Assembly is going this week and next week. You have HSI agents supporting protective duty there as well?
I'm sorry, for UNGA, for
For
UN
UNGA,
General
yes.
Assembly? General Assembly? Yes, sir, we do. We have around 1,200 agents supporting the UN General Assembly.
1,200. And what percentage of the entire complement of agents that you have is supporting UNGA right now?
We have around, my math isn't great, around 7,000, 7,600 agents. So we have about 1,200 supporting UNGA.
So it's about 18%, something like that, maybe?
It's a significant number of agents.
Thank you, and thank you for yielding to me, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nadler is recognized for his 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Berger, as I noted in my opening statement, I'm somewhat skeptical of the proposal to grant Title 21 authority to HSI, but I want to give you the opportunity to make the case for why it is necessary and appropriate. In your opinion, what specific limitations or challenges does HSI face in drug enforcement without Title 21 authority, and how does this lack of authority impact the effectiveness of HSI's operations in this area?
The way drug cartels and TCOs operate has changed dramatically over the last decade. These are no longer single-scope violators. They are polycriminal organizations that are involved in many different types of crime. HSI, as an agency that investigates polycriminal activity, is well-poised and well-positioned to attack these polycriminal organizations on all aspects of their criminal activity. For instance, if one of the limitations we face right now, if HSI is working a human smuggling case, and they discover that the organization is also involved in narcotics smuggling, we have to pause our investigation. Really not pause, we have to stop our investigation and take time to complete other administrative tasks with DEA. We totally lose the momentum on the case. Oftentimes we may lose evidence, we may lose the opportunity to identify witnesses, use cooperating defendants, execute controlled deliveries to identify more violators that are involved in these sorts of activities, rescue victims. It really slows us down tremendously and affects these cases in a very negative way.
Thank you. And if granted Title 21 authority, how would HSI avoid conflicts with DEA investigations?
DEA is a great partner. We have collaborated traditionally, historically, over the years, and many of our very best cases against the cartels and TCOs have been worked jointly and collaboratively with DEA. We deconflict regularly with DEA. The deconfliction would not stop, and I envision we would continue to work collectively and collaboratively against these organizations that are bringing fentanyl into our communities and killing our friends, family members, other community members.
I assume, my next question you may have just answered, and that is, how would you minimize redundancies and inefficiencies created by giving overlapping authority to multiple agencies?
Sir, thank you for the question. And it may look like there are redundancies, and there are some redundancies, but we all bring very unique authorities to the table. All of the agencies have different authorities and different expertise. Our history as a U.S. Customs Service agency and our work with our foreign partners, our international presence, our expertise with the supply chain, with our collaboration with CBP, really gives us the unique abilities to attack this problem at all parts of the supply chain. It wouldn't really be redundant. We would really be leveraging all of our joint and very unique and distinct expertise to bring so much additional effort and fight against these cartels. Title 21 would easily bring 10,000 trained law enforcement professionals between my HSI criminal investigators and our task force officers immediately, 10,000 more trained law enforcement professionals to the fight against fentanyl at no cost to the U.S. government or the American people.
No cost. What additional resources or support would be necessary for HSI to effectively exercise Title 21 authority, and how would HSI plan to manage these resources effectively?
I'm sorry, sir.
What additional resources or support would be necessary for HSI to effectively exercise Title 21 authority, and how would HSI plan to manage these resources effectively?
We wouldn't need any additional resources to execute this. There would be some minimal training that may be involved. I don't see it being extensive.
Okay. My last question. I also discussed in my opening statement the need for greater transparency and accountability to HSI. We know that the Attorney General's guidelines for domestic FBI operations govern the FBI's investigative authorities. Has HSI developed similar guidelines for its agencies? If not, why not? And are there plans to do so? And what specific oversight mechanisms are in place to ensure that HSI's broad authority is exercised within the bounds of the law? And how are these mechanisms monitored and enforced? And that's really like two questions.
The gentleman's time has expired, but you may answer the question, please.
Certainly, any authorities that we have, any technologies that we utilize, we are very concerned with preserving constitutional protections, civil liberties, civil rights. I was a public defender prior to being hired on as a special agent. I am very, very well aware of the rights of the community, the accused, and we certainly something that's in the forefront of everything that we do, and we're certainly very transparent.
But my question was, has HSI developed similar guidelines for its agents, similar to the Attorney General's guidelines for domestic FBI operations?
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Thanks for being here. You had 16 people at Butler, and my question is, did they participate in a morning muster meeting that day of the attempted assassination?
Thank you for the question. I would have to defer any questions as to the on-the-ground operational activity in Butler to the Secret Service.
But I'm asking about your people, because the problem we're having, and Republicans and Democrats have noted, is we're not getting really forthright answers from the Secret Service in a timely way. And your agents, you had 16 people there, and those people either participated in a morning muster meeting, which is the protocol to make sure everyone's on the same page, has the same comms, that all the duties are correctly assigned and prepared to be executed. So can you get back to the committee with just a yes or no on whether or not they participated in that morning?
Yes.
Okay, good, great. I now want to talk about Ryan Roth. Ryan Roth is the person who attempted to assassinate President Trump at his golf club in Florida. And was Ryan Roth ever referred to HSI for further investigation of his activities?
Thank you for the question, sir. I recently, just this morning, learned there was an article that he was, when he entered back into the country from overseas, CBP had contacted HSI, and I read all of the items, the things that he was stating, and basically as a U.S. citizen returning to our country from Ukraine as a freedom fighter. Based on the information that I read, there would not have been any reason to immediately take him into custody. He had not made any threats, for instance, against the president or former President Trump. HSI responds to port of entry calls, hundreds of responses, probably daily. Just because a person isn't taken into custody immediately doesn't mean that they're not subject of a longer-term investigation.
But you can confirm the Just the News reporting that the suspected Trump attempted assassin was flagged by CBP and was referred to HSI. Can you confirm that?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so, and it was kind of a crazy story. So is it legal for someone to go recruit for a foreign military? Does that break any laws?
I don't know, sir. I would have to look into that a little bit further.
Me too, frankly, but if recruiting for a foreign military was somehow improper, then that would necessitate some need for investigation, I would think. And here's the story that CBP picked up when they referred it to HSI. They say in their memo, suspect is a U.S. citizen who traveled to Kyiv, Ukraine, for 3 months to help recruit soldiers from Afghanistan, Moldova, and Taiwan to fight in the Ukrainian war against Russia. Subject stated that he does not get paid for his recruiting efforts, and all his work for the Ukrainian government is strictly volunteer work. The subject stated that he obtains money from his wife to help fund his trips to Ukraine. And so when this guy shows up with a business card and this story about how he's recruiting fighters in Ukraine and his wife's paying for it, CBP says this is a little odd, and then they send it to HSI. HSI declines to further investigate. And what you're saying is you think based on the facts that you're aware of now, that was the right decision by HSI.
No, if I may, sir, the statements that day would not rise to the level to take him into immediate custody.
But what about just like to investigate? Because sometimes investigations proceed without a subject being taken into custody.
These are longer-term investigations. We are actively participating with Secret Service and FBI. In fact,
No, I'm talking about at this point in time, though. Here's what you got to answer for me. When CBP refers this to HSI, what I believe happened is the HSI declined not only to incarcerate this person, but to further investigate the person. Are you saying that they declined to investigate, or that investigation went forward and the attempted assassination occurred during the pendency of that investigation?
I would have to look into that a little bit further, sir. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really important second thing for you to get back to us on, is whether or not HSI made an active decision in real time to decline further investigation of this person. And frankly, I mean, you know, this isn't someone who, like, was jaywalking. They tried to kill the leading Republican candidate for president and the former president of the United States. And so I really think it's important to get those answers. I thank you for being here. Thank you for all the good work of your agency. I yield back.
Thank you. Gentleman yields back. I now, for just a moment of housekeeping, yield a minute to the ranking member of the whole committee, Mr. Nadler, for just one moment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to note the presence and welcome the newest member of the subcommittee, Chuy Garcia of Chicago. Tomorrow at the full committee markup, I'll have a more formal and more fulsome introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Nadler, and welcome, Representative Garcia. Welcome. Chair now recognizes Representative Dean for her 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs, Ranking Member McBath, for holding this important hearing, and welcome, Chuy. Director Berger, I hope you will convey my thanks to the more than 10,000 employees who you oversee and who are on the front lines of critical issues that you've been discussing, we've been discussing, like drug trafficking, child sexual exploitation, national security, just to name a few. It is September, it is Recovery Month, and I have a son who is more than 11 years in recovery, and yet I have friends who have lost sons and daughters to fentanyl poisoning, to overdose. The crisis is extraordinary, and I think I want to know from you, from the front lines, what you are seeing. We know that, for example, last year, more than 80,000 people died of opioid overdose. More than 108,000 people died of drug overdose, but 80,000 of opioid overdose. That is almost twice the number of people who die in car crashes in a single year. It's a staggering number. So on the issue of fentanyl and drug trafficking, how does HSI engage with communities and stakeholders affected by drug trafficking? And how do you measure success around the seizure and the reduction of fentanyl coming into our communities?
Thank you for the question, and I agree. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying, and it's an epidemic that HSI brings a lot of our authorities to that fight against the fentanyl epidemic. We work with communities. We work with locally with our border enforcement security task forces, with state, local, tribal officials to further investigations into the criminal organizations that are bringing this poison into our communities. We work beyond our borders with our attaché offices and our transnational criminal investigative units in other countries to start targeting shipments of precursor chemicals and fentanyl-producing equipment such as pill presses that are exported predominantly from China into Mexico. We have TCIUs that work, transnational criminal investigative units, vetted foreign law enforcement partners that work closely with our personnel in our attaché's office.
Can I ask you about the precursor chemicals and the pill presses coming largely from China? Isn't it true that many of those touch down in the United States before going, airports in the United States before going to Mexico?
Yes, ma'am, and we are working with CBP to target those shipments and seize both the equipment and the precursor chemicals. We work as well with our industry partners, companies that import the precursor chemicals, our Know Your Partner campaign, so that they know to recognize any anomalies in shipments or importers that things just don't look right, so that they know to report those instances to law enforcement. And also it helps us to see trends, like what's really going on. If there's shifts in trends, we're better able to devise investigative strategies to attack.
Can you identify a success so that families who are so worried about this, like my own, what successes are you having and what challenges are you having?
We continue to seize a great deal of fentanyl and precursor chemicals and equipment, fentanyl-making equipment. Our seizures have gone up increasingly over the last several years. We've increased the number of our border enforcement security task forces to better combat this problem in our communities. Embedded within our BEST teams are FAST teams, fentanyl abatement and suppression teams, as well as FORTs, which are fentanyl overdose recovery teams, to better focus and leverage our authorities against the fentanyl problem directly.
Let me shift briefly in the time I have left. Could you give us an update on your work in helping identify, find child victims and survivors of sexual exploitation?
Thank you for the question, ma'am. We take leads from any source. If someone has information about a child victim, a victim of child sexual abuse or human trafficking, we welcome those leads and rely on them heavily to advance our investigations.
And what role does AI play in identifying victims?
AI, thank you for the question regarding AI. We hear a lot about it in the news. There are some very valid uses that we have for AI. We're having tremendous success with the identification of child victims in sexual exploitation material.
Thank you, and I apologize, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Chair recognizes now the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, thank you for being here. I think Ms. Dean said it, we have people dying of fentanyl, drug trafficking, serious issue in our country. I was an old sheriff. We dealt with it in our county when I was a sheriff. I was listening what the chairman of the full committee said a few minutes ago about Butler, you having 16 agents there. Then I hear the chairman of this subcommittee talk about, so you have 7,100 agents, I guess, and what is your staffing? You maybe have 7,100 funding, but how many do you actually have? Do you know what that number would be? Are you staffed at 90, 95%? Or?
Have it in here.
All right, well, maybe somebody behind you can answer that, but this is the issue I have. So the UN General Assembly, did you say you're sending 1,200 of your agents up there?
That's correct, sir.
1,200. So when you find out the number, let's say you've got 7,000, 6,800, whatever that number, so you're gonna send 1,200. So 25% of your workforce is going to go to, is it New York for a couple of weeks? Is that the assignment to augment or supplement the Secret Service?
That's correct.
Do you ever just raise your hand or just stop and say, I can't send you 1,200 agents? The hell am I gonna do that for? We've got a border, we're losing 100,000 people to drug trafficking, to sex trafficking, everything taking place, and you're up there at the UN with 25% of your workforce. Do you ever say, that's not, I'm looking at your mission statement. The mission of HSI is to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle TCOs, which are transnational criminal organizations, and national security threats seeking to exploit the customs and immigration laws of the United States. Now, so I don't know how many human smuggling cases do you anticipate investigating at the UN?
The support to Secret Service is an
It's not the question. How many human smuggling cases? I mean, that's one of your missions. You ain't gonna investigate any of those at the UN. Do we consider, how many transnational criminal organizations do you anticipate investigating at the UN Assembly? Unless we consider the UN a transnational criminal organization. The point I'm trying to make is, as a leader, do you ever say, you're taking 25% of my workforce? And I don't think, quite honestly, you must not really be very well respected by the FBI. I say that because if the FBI, the lead investigator, Butler, never even contacted any of your 16 agents, you may just be filling a gap. That would be insulting, if, in my opinion, if the FBI, you have 16 people there to supplement, augment, whatever, and they, so what were you doing? Were you out in the parking lot with a road guard vest and a wand? I think you need to focus on what your true mission is, and that is, the mission at hand is to try to prevent the deaths of fentanyl and these organizations of sex trafficking coming in. But apparently, you're everywhere else. You quote, 101,000 Americans died from drug overdoses, with fentanyl and other synthetic opioids responsible for 2/3 of these deaths in a 12-month period in 2024. But yet, oh, don't worry about it, we're gonna send 25% of our workforce up to New York for a couple of weeks. We're losing too many people. 41,000 pounds of fentanyl seized in 2023. How much do you think it gets through that's not detected? How much fentanyl would you estimate gets smuggled that goes undetected?
I can't answer that, sir.
Bunches, I'm sure. Houston, represent Texas, 604 people died in 2023 of fentanyl poisoning. But yet, okay, let's send 25% of them up there to New York. Don't worry about it. We'll put the health and welfare of the American people last. We've got a problem on our hands, and our government now spends billions of dollars to combat the problem President Biden created in day one of his administration. Hard to fathom my colleagues on the left would want to take resources away from our brave law enforcement. There's a poster I have here. It's Kamala Harris. She's the leader of the Democrat Party in 2019, an ACLU candidate questionnaire. She quoted, "As president, I will fight to pass my Detention Oversight, not Expansion Act into law, which would increase oversight of ICE detention beds, slash detention by 50%, 50% detention bed, and halt funding for the construction or expansion of new facilities." How do you feel about that? Do we need to defund? How do you feel about that when you hear calls for abolishing or significantly cutting ICE funding? And what impact would that have on you, on HSI?
I defer any questions regarding detention facilities to ERO.
Yeah. Kamala Harris, you did this to the American people. Joe Biden, you've put the American people last.
Gentleman's time's expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fentanyl is a problem. Do you have any idea what percentage of fentanyl comes into this country through trucks coming from South America, airplanes coming from other countries, or by immigrants bringing it in their purses?
Thank you for the question, sir. I don't have any breakdown, but we can work on that and get you some follow-up information.
Do you have any idea at all? Does most of it come by one way or another? Does it come by trucks coming in, or by people coming in, or by airplanes, or what?
It's coming in various ways, trucks, consignment hubs. I'd be a lot more comfortable getting back to some definitive information as to if we can put some figures to that. I think it'd be much more accurate. I want to give you accurate information.
I don't need it to the exact number. I just want a ballpark figure. Can you give me a guess? What's your best estimate? Which is the most likely source?
Again, sir, I don't want to guess.
I don't want you to guess. I want to use your information and give me your opinion based on your history of knowing where fentanyl comes from.
I can't say, sir. I'm sorry.
All right, that's ridiculous, but I'll let it go. Women that have been brought into this country for sex slaves, where do they mostly come in from? Walk in from the border, come in on airplanes from Europe, come in by trucks, or where?
Thank you for that question, sir. Human trafficking and sex trafficking is a very important part of our portfolio. Sex trafficking victims are not necessarily, they can be foreign nationals, but they can also be U.S. citizens. It's not a crime against the border, it's a crime against the person. So many of the sex trafficking victims that we encounter are U.S. citizens. There are trafficking victims that come in from foreign countries as well. Labor trafficking is another very serious crime that we investigate.
How do the human trafficked people come into our country, the ones that aren't born here?
They can come in various ways through.
What is the main way they come in?
They can come in across our land border, ports of entry. They can come in on.
Well, I understand that they can parachute in from a Chinese balloon, but what is the main way they come in?
I would say the land border, sir.
They come into the land borders. And do you think they come in on foot or in trucks or in vans?
Again, sir, I don't have specific statistics for you. I can get back to you with that information, however.
Do you work with companies like FedEx on trying to ferret out importation of drugs?
Correct, sir, and other contraband.
And do you have agents at FedEx in Memphis at their hub?
Yes, sir, we do.
And do y'all do a good job of inspecting packages that may be suspect to ferret out drugs?
We work collaboratively with CBP and our other partners to target. There is a large volume of parcels and shipments that come in, but we target extensively to better identify suspect packages and take contraband off the streets.
And do you do the same thing with UPS
Yes, sir.
and with USPS?
Yes, sir.
Senator Scott, I understand, put in a bill or said he was going to put in a bill to require that Secret Service protection be the same for former presidents as they are for current presidents. Does it make any sense whatsoever for Jimmy Carter to have the same number of Secret Service agents as Mr. Trump?
I'd have to defer that to Secret Service, sir. That's really a question for them.
No, it's a question for you. I'm asking you. A man who's 100 years old, infirm, in a bed, can hardly get up. Does he need Secret Service protection to the same extent as Mr. Trump, who plays golf and goes around and speaks, and President Biden, who goes around and speaks?
I wouldn't like to make judgments.
I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Moore.
Ms. Berger, thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, the southern border's been in the headlines a great deal, and kind of to follow up on what my colleague was asking, when we went to the border, I talk about this all the time, that the people coming from south of the border are dealing with the cartel. They're paying money to cross the southern border, and one of the most eye-opening things, just south of the border, this was months ago prior to all the inflation, but it was $4,000 or $5,000 they'd pay the cartel, and they'd smuggle them into our country. And if they were further south, it was $8,000 or $9,000. And I think Syrians were paying about $18,000 or $19,000. I don't remember what the Russians were paying, but the thing that when I went with Mr. Biggs and he took us down to the border, one of the things that I found was fascinating. Some of those people didn't have the money to pay the cartel, but they'd put on carpet shoes so they wouldn't have footprints, and they would backpack heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl across that border as a way to pay their passage to the cartel. And then I guess the drugs would be delivered once they cross the border to some distributor or whatever the case may be. Not exactly sure what happened after they got into the country, but fentanyl is certainly an issue. I think 110,000 people died, I think, last year, maybe 109,000, depending on who you ask. I actually attended a funeral Monday, and I come from a fairly small town, and this young man graduated with my daughter, and I'm attending a lot of these funerals. We're losing these young people, think they're buying a Xanax. I think this particular kid actually used one of those vape pods, and it was laced with fentanyl. And so as we move forward, why are we losing the battle to save our young people in America with fentanyl, and what can we do to help you do the job, and what do you see as the issues that keep you awake at night?
Thank you, sir, for the question. Certainly the fentanyl epidemic does keep me awake at night. We dedicate a lot of resources government-wide to combat these organizations bringing fentanyl into our communities. Again, I think I spoke previously about Title 21 authority. Many of these these are polycriminal organizations that are not just trafficking and smuggling fentanyl into the country, but they're also using other types of crimes, human smuggling, human trafficking, weapons trafficking. They're using the same routes, the same money laundering mechanisms. HSI as an agency investigates all of these types of crimes. We have extensive expertise with these areas of crime. continued partnership with DEA and Title 21 authority for us so that we can investigate fully these polycriminal organizations would help us, give us another tool in our toolbox to help dismantle these polycriminal organizations that are bringing this poison into our communities.
So, Director Berger, you said that, or somebody mentioned, I think in the questioning, that a lot of the raw materials for fentanyl actually land in the U.S. and then they go to Mexico. Are they, when they go to Mexico, are they shipping them in trucks or planes or a little bit of both? How are they going back across to make the actual product that comes across in the backpacks that we see?
I think predominantly the chemicals are going directly into Mexico. There is some diversion out of the legitimate supply chain where chemicals enter and then are transported back into Mexico. Predominantly, however, the chemicals are coming directly from China into Mexico.
So, I mean, to get to the causation, what do you think immediately we can do? I mean, I understand you need more resources and we need more investigation, and this thing is a trans-global, whatever, crime syndicate, whatever you want to call it, but what immediately, why are we seeing such a spike? What is going on, and what could we do as Congress immediately to put a halt to some of this? What do you see we need to do? And I get tired of apologizing to these families for losing these children.
Sir, I think what we've historically been doing to combat fentanyl it's just not working, and we need to look at this problem differently and really change the way we're doing business. The criminal cartels, criminal organizations have changed the way they do business, and we need to be nimble and be able to effectively hit them back hard with all the authorities that we have. And HSI has those authorities. With Title 21, as I said, would bring 10,000 more investigators to this fight at no cost to the U.S. government.
Well, I want to segue real quick. I've got about 15 seconds. You said there were 16 agents in Butler County, Pennsylvania, the day that the assassination attempt on President Trump happened. I guess it was the 13th. What specific training is provided to those agents that are assisting Secret Service?
I'm out of time. Would you like me to?
Yes, the gentleman's time's expired, but you may answer the question, Director.
Our workforce are highly trained federal law enforcement professionals. We go through 6 months of training at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. They also, all of our agents go through continuing training throughout their service with the agency. In addition to that, there is a virtual training that agents complete prior to their deployment on a Secret Service detail, but that deals...
It's a virtual training, though?
It is a virtual training.
Okay. I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman. I apologize.
All right. I accept your apology. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Berger, thank you so much for your testimony and also for the excellent work that you do, along with your 8,700 colleagues that keep America safe every day. And I particularly commend you for your previous work as you were in HSI Atlanta for a second, and I appreciate that. Ma'am, cryptocurrency allows for secrecy and impunity in financial transactions. Isn't that correct?
Correct, sir.
And the use of cryptocurrency by international criminals creates unique challenges to our national security. Is that correct?
I would agree with that.
And the use of crypto in the global financial system continues to grow, and criminal actors are increasingly using cryptocurrency to facilitate their criminal activities. Is that correct?
Among other different techniques as well.
And the criminal activities that are being facilitated by the use of crypto include drug trafficking.
Correct, sir.
Illegal gun trafficking.
Correct.
International child exploitation.
Correct.
Human trafficking.
Correct.
Financial scams and financial fraud.
I think all sorts of criminal activity can be facilitated by cryptocurrency transactions.
And criminals prefer cryptocurrency because it enables them to generate wealth while avoiding transparency required under traditional banking structures, which are well regulated by U.S. law, correct?
Yes, sir.
And international criminals use cryptocurrency to secretly move illicit financial proceeds across international boundaries, including to places like Russia and North Korea, correct?
I would assume so, yes.
And you're aware of the fact that just this past, I think it was, it was Sunday night or Monday night, Donald Trump rolled out his new cryptocurrency company, World Liberty Financial.
No, sir, I wasn't aware of that.
We're not aware of that?
No, sir.
Well, it was a big thing. I think he rolled it out on Elon Musk's platform, formerly known as Twitter, and his sons, Don Jr. and Eric, were placed in charge of it, and I think Barron Trump, young 20-year-old college student, has something to do with it as well. A whiz kid, they're calling him, about cryptocurrency. What are the implications of a man who has been convicted of 34 counts of financial fraud, facing three additional indictments alleging criminal activity, getting his hands on the levers of power over our international national security criminal law investigations like the ones that your agency is responsible for conducting. What are the implications of that?
I'm not a cryptocurrency expert. I know that all cryptocurrency is not illegal, the use of it. I think I'm a little long in the tooth for cryptocurrency, quite frankly. I can't really speak to that. I don't have enough information about that, sir.
Well, I'm concerned about it, and I know that perhaps there might be some colleagues on the other side of the aisle who might be concerned about it as well. But in addition to cryptocurrency, there are other emerging threats. What proactive measures does HSI take when it comes to emerging threats like cryptocurrency and the use of cryptocurrency to facilitate crime, international crime?
Thank you for that question. Certainly, I'd like to highlight our Cross-Border Financial Crime Center, which leverages our relationships with our partners as well as banking and financial industries to look at various emerging trends with money laundering and other schemes that criminal organizations are using to launder their illicit finances.
And a president of the United States.
Gentleman's time has expired. I recognize now the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Garcia, and I welcome you to the committee, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Biggs. It's an honor to join the Judiciary Committee. And thank you, Ms. Berger, for your service and those of all your personnel. As we've discussed, HSI is interpreting its authority in an overly broad manner, in my opinion, and it continues to expand. This can spill over into jurisdictions of other federal agencies and where HSI has little or no documented experience and lead to government surveillance without any suspicion or wrongdoing. These broad surveillance powers are of concerns to many of the communities represented in this room, certainly mine, and that fear is acute in a district like mine. Most of my constituents are Latino and 1/3 are foreign-born, groups that studies show have been particularly impacted by HSI's unwarranted surveillance. So my first question is, what steps, if any, has HSI taken to address revelations that it abused authority, leading to the surveillance of thousands of personal financial transactions?
Thank you for the question, sir. I'm not I'm not familiar, I'm not sure I'm tracking specifically what you're asking about. We don't engage in unwarranted surveillance. If we are conducting surveillance on individuals, it's because they are subjects of active investigations. I don't know if it's related to, again, I'm speaking to HSI, I'm not speaking to civil immigration-related enforcement operations. I'm speaking as to the criminal activities that we would be conducting surveillance on individuals.
Well, I would appreciate if you would get back to me, because this was reported in various news outlets over the past couple of years, and there's growing concern about it. So if you could do a little bit of research on that, I'd appreciate it. And real quick, changing gears, there's another area where HSI takes an inappropriately expansive view of its role, and that's immigration enforcement. So just for some context here, although HSI's mission has more to do with transnational crime, it regularly involves itself in raids targeting undocumented workers. But HSI agents themselves have advocated for greater distance between the two, saying that involvement in immigration enforcement can impede important investigations. So how does HSI continue to justify its immigration enforcement activities given those concerns, and how does HSI promote transparency, especially in sensitive operations like immigration enforcement?
Thank you for the question, sir. There's a lot of confusion between what HSI does and what we don't do. And what we don't do is civil immigration enforcement. We are working longer-term complex criminal investigations, and specifically towards the questions with worksite enforcement and raids. We've shifted our agency's posture from worksite investigations to labor exploitation investigations. Our focus is on the employers that are engaging in unfair practices and taking advantage of especially workers and people who don't have a lawful immigration status, that they can be paid less wages, they can be subject to unsafe working conditions. We treat them rightfully so as victims. We provide victim services to them and really focus on the employers and help the victims that are being exploited in these situations to get services that they may need to be in a better position to help with the prosecution of those employers that are subjecting them to these unfair conditions.
No issue there. I think the emphasis should be focusing on criminal type of activity, and certainly where there's financial gain to be made as a result of that involvement. I will be engaging with you if reports to the contrary surface. I look forward to further engagement. Thank you so much. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Gentleman yields back, and I recognize myself for my 5 minutes of questioning. Thank you again for being here, Director. So let's talk Title 21 for just a second here. In a Washington Post article dated January 4th, 2023, Secretary Mayorkas said he indicated that very clearly that he felt that Title 21 authority needed to be in the hands of HSI. Would you agree with his assessment that you should have Title 21 authority?
Yes, sir, I agree with the Secretary 100%.
And one of the things you said, and I want to just emphasize this, is that if you're engaged in an investigation of human trafficking, for instance, and it turns out that there's drugs going with it, you're going to have to stop your investigation. And you're not just doing some paperwork with DEA, you're actually negotiating with DEA a scope of authority that they're going to allow you to use. Is that fair?
That's correct.
And so you could actually scuttle a whole investigation with regard to human trafficking simply because there's drugs involved and DEA doesn't want to let you proceed on. And so you could lose witnesses and opportunities to investigate. Is that fair?
That's correct, sir.
And so I would just point out to the committee that Rep. Higgins has introduced 5713, and it's a bipartisan piece of legislation that would actually grant them HSI Title 21 authority. I'm on it. Rep. Moore's on it. Rep. Louis Correa is on it, and I think that's something we should consider. I want to go on something else that has been raised as well today, and I want to see if we can make sure we clear this up. When you deploy, like in this, you got 1,200 going to UNGA. I don't know how many other agents you have in the field that are going to other protective details right now. But when you get 12, 13, 14, 1,500 agents off, you're having to divert from what is the true mission of HSI. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And so my question ultimately becomes this: how do those assignments are those coming down from the secretary? I mean, it's implied that maybe you raise your hand to volunteer. I have this sneaking suspicion that you're not raising your hand volunteering, saying, take 20% of my workforce right off the top.
No, sir, I'm not. Thank you for the opportunity to elaborate a little bit more on that. Historically, we have supported Secret Service, CBP, other components within DHS in their mission. It's not optimal, but they are a fellow agency within the department, and we will support them as a whole of government approach.
So who gives you that notices like UNGA? I mean, this is the United Nations General Assembly. I mean, I used to do international and go to multilateral institutions, and I've been there many times. And so my question is, who determines that you need to give them 1,200, 1,300 people to go up to UNGA?
We try to negotiate down sometimes, and with the current.
So who tells you, say, hey, by the way, this is going on, we want agents? Is that coming from the Secretary's office?
They send a request for assistance, and we.
And if you say no, what happens? Well, we don't want to know what happens, okay? We can imagine what probably happens. So that's important to know, and I've offered a number of different solutions, and we'll see what we can do going forward. But I will tell you that there were news reports right after Butler, which indicated that, because most of the training, and you're talking training for investigative work, you're not talking protective detail work. That I imagine your academy doesn't spend a great deal of time on protective detail duty in your academy.
No, sir, we're not trained in the close protective duties to protect the principal. We support Secret Service in more collateral law enforcement support, for example, post-standing. Post-standing is a large part of what we do with Secret Service.
So what we need to do is maybe get more people with Title 21 authority and not divert it away from their mission. And let's get Secret Service to do their mission. Last thing is, I know that one of the members was asking you about how much drug interdiction, how much human trafficking is coming across the border. What he was really getting at is he wants you to say that most of the drugs and human trafficking is interdicted at POEs. Well, that may or may not be the case, but you're not just working at ports of entry. You're working all over in the interior as well. And so please elaborate on that.
Smuggling can occur both at the ports of entry, between the ports of entry, can come in via the land borders, our sea borders, our airports. It's really a much more complex situation. Once the fentanyl or the contraband is in the nation, then it's continued to be distributed through networks that these polycriminal organizations are using to distribute this poison throughout our communities. What we do with HSI is really focus on the networks, not necessarily the individual cases, but the networks that these organizations are using to move people, narcotics, weapons, other commodities throughout the country.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your being here. I know there's some follow-up. You've got some action items left, and so we'll look forward to seeing those responses. And with that, we are adjourned.